Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Christy. I'm a bookseller at Belmont Books. I'm hosting the event tonight. Belmont Books, as many of you may know, is an independent bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. We will be putting some links to purchase Crystal and Jenn's books in our chat from Belmont Books. And you can also come visit us in person, visit us online. We'd love to see you. So I will introduce our panelists. First, we have Jenn Bouchard, who has been a high school social studies teacher for 21 years. She is a graduate of Bates College and Tufts University. Her short fiction has been published in the Bookends Review, Lit Break Magazine, the Penman Review, and the Little, I didn't practice this, Patuxent, is that right, Jenn?
Yeah.
Little Patuxent Review, amazing. First Course is her first novel, and today is the publication date. We are launching this thing. An avid cook and devoted Red Sox fan, she lives in the Boston suburbs with her husband and two children, ages 10 and 14. And then Crystal King is the author of The Chef's Secret and The Feast of Sorrow, which was longlisted for the Center for Fiction's first novel prize and was a must-read for the Mass Book Awards. She is an author, culinary enthusiast, and marketing expert. Her writing is fueled by a love of history and a passion for the food, language, and culture of Italy. She has taught classes in writing, creativity, and social media at several universities, including Harvard Extension School and Boston University and at Grove Street. Crystal received her MA in Critical and Creative Thinking from UMass Boston, where she developed a series of exercises and writing prompts to help fiction writers in medias res. And we will put Jenn and Crystal's websites in the chat as well. So now I believe our first order of business is a fun one, which is the giveaway. So Jenn, do you want to introduce the giveaway?
Yes. This is a custom LL Bean boat and tote bag full of all kinds of great things for your summer. There's a first course water bottle in here. There are all kinds of Maine goodies from Stonewall Kitchen and my favorite bar in Portland, Venus Fizz House. And so I'm thrilled to share this with one person tonight.
Yeah, and so we've taken all our attendees, drawn numbers from our virtual hat, and the winner of the gift bag is Carolyn Savage. Are you there, Carolyn? Are you in the?
I see her in the attendees.
So Carolyn's the big winner. So congratulations. I'm very jealous of your of your tasty treats to come.
And Carolyn lives in the same town as me, so I'll be able to get this to her really easily.
Perfect. Amazing. So without further ado, Jenn and Crystal.
All right, thank you. What a wonderful introduction, right? I am so excited to be here today to talk about this book. And thank you so much, Jenn, for asking me to celebrate this like super special day with you. I remember the day that I had my first book launch, and it is just so wonderful to like see friends and to see your baby go out into the world. And so I have a whole bunch of questions because I really enjoyed reading this book. It was so fun. This is like the perfect summer beach read in a way too, but like you need to have a big cookout at this beach read, I think. Like after you've had it or before, you need to, you definitely have to have a lot of food when you're having this read. But I just thought this was so fun. I really enjoy the characters and I have a ton of questions about them. So before I get going, I want to say two things. One, I have cats that are sometimes loud or obnoxious. And so if I seem slightly distracted, that could be why. I also have my questions to my left, to your left, my right, on a different screen. So if I'm looking away, that's why. So my first question for you, Jenn, is really just tell us about the book and what inspired it.
Well, first, I wanted to thank a few people, if you don't mind. I want to thank, of course, Belmont Books for partnering with us for this launch, particularly Christy, who's hosting us tonight. Kathy and Stacy have also been instrumental in planning this, so thank you so much. My publicist, Kathleen O, who's in Ireland, it's been a lot of fun working on this with her. My publisher at Touchpoint Press, Sherry Williams, the publisher, has been a big believer in First Course since the word go, and I'm so grateful. Media liaison, Chelsea Piper, has been amazing. My editor, Jen Haskin, understood this book from the second that she read it and was so helpful in making it what it is now. My amazing cover, David Tur Eviasin, I can't thank him enough. I've gotten more compliments on this cover than I ever could have imagined, but it's not that surprising because it's really good. And finally, for any local Boston authors, you probably know Sharona Jacobs, but she took my author photo, and I'm just so thrilled with the chance to get to work with her. Grub Street, we talked about Grub Street earlier. They were very helpful for me in so many ways, particularly my consultant I worked with, Ursula DeYoung, on my query and my first few chapters. The Women's Fiction Writers Association, my 2021 debuts group on Facebook. The authors who blurred my book, Emily Belden, Sarah Lynn Bruck, Christina Consolino, Kristen Contino, so grateful for them. And finally, my wonderful husband, Ryan, has been such a support through this whole process. My kids, Grant and Avery, and my close friends who came to celebrate with me, and my parents and my in-laws, they all came to celebrate with me this weekend, and another crew came over today. So I'm just so thankful for all of you. So I know that was a lot, but I have a lot of people to thank.
That's okay.
So back to the question about the book and what inspired it. I started working on this almost 7 years ago at this point. I just finished a major volunteer position, and I was really needing to, I was staring down 40, and I was really needing to find something else just for me. Like Christy said, I've been teaching for 21 years now, and I'm still doing that, but I really needed some sort of a second act for myself. And in doing so, I started writing a book about people's second acts. So I think it was just sort of natural that it happened that way.
So tell us a little bit about the plot of the book without giving away too many spoilers. And then I would love to, I'm sure I'm not the only one that would love this, but could you read a little bit from it?
Yeah. Okay, so like I said, it is about people's second acts, really a number of characters. Most of the characters in the book are faced with big decisions about what they want to do next. And they were brought to this moment, in many cases, some of them by their own doing, and others by situations that were just totally beyond their control. And as they make these decisions, their relationships change, they grow as people, and they kind of figure out what they want in the next part of their lives. So do you want me to read about a page?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear it. I mean, okay. I read it, but I want to hear it in your voice.
All right. Cole drummed his fingers on the desk, not looking up. It's a one-way ticket. He opened his arms up, and I climbed into his lap. It felt strange to act this way in his office after hiding our situation from everyone around us for its tenure, but none of that mattered anymore. The magazine was done, and it looked like the relationship was as well. This felt like goodbye. I tried to squash every biting, sarcastic, snarky comment that was bubbling up in my brain and throat at that moment. Don't call him a mama's boy. Don't call him a trust fund baby. Don't tell him to grow up. Is this how I really see him? What will you do there? I asked, attempting to keep my voice steady. He sat up a bit straighter, forcing me to shift my seat on his knees. No idea. What are you going to do here? Point taken. But I guess I unrealistically expected more out of someone 14 years my senior. Anyway, I guess I don't know either. We only get a month of severance, so it's not much time to figure things out. Janie, you've got your life ahead of you. Don't just sit in your apartment making hors d'oeuvres for the next month. There was a distinct possibility that I was going to do that, with cocktails, aesthetically beautiful and delicious cocktails. You have so many talents, so many gifts. You need to share them with the world. Remember, Vienna waits for you. I stared at him until he tapped on the framed autographed picture of Billy Joel that still sat on his desk. I got off his lap and stood up. I felt anger building. Enough. I've never understood this. What is Vienna? Am I traveling to Europe? I don't think so. I have thousands of dollars in student loans from Northwestern to pay. He was trying to be metaphoric and poetic, but he spoke from a different place than I did. He had hot pink love money. Cole gave a huge grin, disregarding my response that had bordered on yelling. I wanted to punch him in the face. You'll find your Vienna. So will I. There's a big future out there for you, Janie. You're going to be great. He closed his eyes, sat back in his chair, and started singing along with Billy. It was over. I stormed out, ordered an Uber from my phone, and got the hell out of there. Almost a year of my life, and all I got was Vienna.
All right. So Janie's life, that's the very beginning of the book, right? Yeah. Like the first page and a half. So her life just totally upends in this moment. And there's a whole bunch of other things that also happen immediately in the book that make her life really challenging. So I really am curious about the character of Janie and when you were creating her, like how did you think about her? What did she, how did she speak to you? What did you think about Janie as you were writing the book? Did it change? All of that good stuff. I just want to know more about Janie.
I really like her willingness to take risks, to put herself in potentially uncomfortable situations. Much later in the book, and I'm not going to give away too much here, she agrees to go to Lake Tahoe. It's a decision that I don't know if I would make this decision myself, because she knows it's going to be incredibly awkward what she has to deal with once she's there. She's pretty gutsy. She also navigates difficult people well. I really enjoyed writing about her interactions with her neighbors, the Ashtons, and also with Kate Heathcliff, the college employee. She's willing to navigate those in a way that I think a lot of people just wouldn't have the patience for, even though she gets incredibly frustrated with them. But I also really like how she grows as a person throughout the story. I think she starts to figure herself out better, and I think she also becomes a lot better at setting boundaries.
So the relationships that she's dealing with in the book are pretty complex. Characters that are there, they realize that the people that they're with, like currently, like you just read about Cole, they're not necessarily the people they thought they were, and maybe there's other decisions that they need to make when you suddenly realize those types of things. So how did you weave all this together and all of these crazy decisions that these two sisters have to make about the people in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, the way I approached it was that we all have flaws as individuals, and these characters certainly have flaws. Writing about Alyssa and Patrick's relationship was really challenging because it's complicated, and no matter where those two end up, there are always going to be issues. I feel like they're always going to have things that they have to work out and come to terms with. So I wanted to make sure that the flaws were there and they were acknowledged, but I also wanted to write the story as hopeful. I felt like I wanted to root for all of them in different ways.
I was thinking that, like, when you wrote about Lance and Rocky and Cole, which are the three love interests that Janie has, I like that she's got three. And there were different times that I liked or disliked them, but for the most part, I wanted to root for all of them. And so, what were your thoughts when you were writing the book? Like, you could kind of were just saying, like, how did you make the decisions relating to them?
So I have a lot of thoughts on this, so bear with me. But so Lance, I think about this sometimes. Lance is so stuck at the beginning of the story, and I think, like, if Janie didn't move back, what would have happened to him? Would he still be like living with his parents, eating his mother's terrible food? Like, I don't know. Despite
Nobody wants to eat terrible food.
no. I mean, that was actually really fun coming up with Meredith Ashton's cooking creations, especially sweet potato casserole in the middle of the summer. You know, despite the fact that Janie is just not interested in rekindling anything with him, you know, I like the fact, I like how things end for him. I don't want to say too much, but I do like how things end for Lance. But it's tough to get there. Cole was actually one of my favorite characters to write because he's such a jerk in so many ways, but there are these glimmers of redeeming qualities that made him charming, you know, at times, but also incredibly frustrating. One of the things that I knew from the very beginning that he was going to be the son of a one-hit wonder from the 80s. Like that was a non-negotiable. I just loved the idea of that. And also, you know, the Billy Joel obsession, it just doesn't even really fit with him, with his character, with, you know, his life path. So I kind of liked making him, you know, sort of odd in that way, as well as the Carrie Connors. And for those who haven't read it yet, I'll introduce a minor character named Carrie Connors, which was also a lot of fun to write. So that was a good time writing him. And then finally, Rocky is about as close as we get to, you know, a flawless character, but he does have his moments where he messes up. But he has to be mature at a young age due to his family situation that really shines through. I like how he manages Janie's unconventional family, as well as the Lance situation, which is very painful, like literally painful at times.
Yeah, very painful, actually. So Alyssa, her sister, she and Janie become very close, and I'm not spoiling too much because you've actually used it in the descriptions for the book. But their parents die right away at the very beginning, and they have to basically kind of reconstruct their lives without them. And as a result, they kind of move in together for a brief period of time, and they become really close. So they're close in distance, but they're also becoming a lot more close emotionally. Can you talk about the relationship between them?
Given everything, so Alyssa's going through not only that, but other aspects of her life that, you know, are just falling apart. And Janie's life isn't going great either, but, you know, given what Alyssa is dealing with, Alyssa has 2 young daughters. Alyssa is essentially emotionally paralyzed at this point. So Janie really has to step in and take charge. And so I think that, you know, leads to more of the closeness. They're 6 years apart in age. And so they you know, they weren't always as close when they were younger. But then Janie pushes her to go to yoga, and that leads to a whole bunch of other things. And so she may have regretted that decision. So definitely something for those of you who haven't read the book yet to find out more about. But they do also, I really like the way that they shield the young girls from a lot of the things that are happening. And Rocky, when he comes on the scene, becomes a welcome diversion, I think, also for the girls. They really like him.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a fun thing that I want the audience to help participate in. So I'm going to have you read a page from the book, but I'm going to have them choose it. So that means you don't know what you're going to be reading. You have an out. So if you find that what's on the page is maybe not really what you want to read in public, or it's too much of a spoiler, for example, you have an option to say no, and then we'll pick the next number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the audience put into the chat a number between 1 and 200, and the first one is the page that you're going to have to read. All right, 33.
Let's see.
So I'm excited about this.
Okay.
All right.
So this is great because this was one that I was toying with reading anyway. So like really strongly considering it. So thank you. All right. I think we're okay on language here too. All right. Finally, the front door opened and the girls ran to the hallway to thankfully give their mom hugs. I was relieved, but a bit pissed. Welcome home, Your Highness. I'm so glad that you could join us this afternoon, I said, trying not to roll my eyes. Alyssa giggled in a giddy way that I don't recall ever seeing or hearing. Maybe when she got her acceptance letter to Cornell, but that was too long ago to fully remember. I had been 12 years old. You're not going to bring me down today, little sister, she said in a sing-song voice. Thank you for watching them. It had been a bit more than that, but whatever. What did you guys do? She asked the girls. Trish said, Mom, we went to the coolest place. It's a camp. It's at the WMD. Alyssa raised her eyebrows. Weapons of mass destruction? And you put them in a camp? What's going on? No, exclaimed Trish. Auntie, what's it called? I figured since she'd abandoned me with her children for much longer than the agreed upon 90 minutes, I had some capital to spend. It's a YMCA day camp, and I didn't put them in. I'm not their parent, so I can't. But you are, and I have all the forms. It would just be for the next 2 weeks, and I think it's a good idea. There's swimming and arts and crafts and soccer, all kinds of good stuff. Do you girls want to do it? I knew that I had them in my corner. The place was super fun, and it didn't involve being sequestered in a house with 2 sullen women. Susie and Trish both jumped up and down at that point. Yay, they yelled. Alyssa shrugged her shoulders. Okay, but you need to help me with transportation. I want to do yoga every day and be able to go out to lunch and stuff like that. Maybe get a massage. I can't remember the last massage I had. Anyway, I can't just sit here all day, said the woman who had been parked in an Adirondack chair with a goblet of Chardonnay for the past several weeks. Great, I said. Hey girls, how about playing with your ponies for a bit in the other room so I can talk to Mommy for a few minutes? They happily ran into the next room, thrilled by their victory in WMD camp.
I love that, the WMD camp. So did you go to daycare when you were a kid? I mean, like day camp?
You know, here and there little programs, but not so much. My kids definitely, they're about to start up again on Monday. My son is going to be a CIT, a counselor in training at the same camp, day camp. My daughter's going to be that, so it's going to be
Oh,
good.
that's cool.
And now I have to start writing again.
Yeah, I would say now you have some time, right?
Yeah.
At least you hope.
Yeah, that's the bit.
Okay, so let's talk about my favorite part, really, which is the food. Okay, because I write about food. I love reading books that are about food. So you have a whole bunch of delicious scenes in this novel, and are these scenes from, you know, are the recipes ones that you've cooked? Are they just foods that you love, or were they inspired by something about the characters? So let's talk about the food.
So, I mean, my mom gave me a copy of Nora Ephron's Heartburn when I was a teenager, and I absolutely loved it. I love the way how she was able to weave in, you know, cooking and even whole recipes in some cases. It was so funny, while also dealing with issues of love and loss. And so that really has always been kind of in the back of my mind as I've been writing. And I thought a lot about the kind of, because I really didn't start cooking on my own. Janie starts much younger. You know, there's stuff, you know, later in the book about, you know, food that she had served Patrick when she was only a teenager. And I really didn't start cooking until I was out of college. But I thought a lot about what kind of food I was making at 24 years old, you know, and it was a lot of having friends over. Friends would be visiting, you know, from out of town. We were living in Chicago at the time. We had a lot of friends who would, you know, visit us as they were traveling across country to grad school or a job or something like that. So it was like learning how to cook and making a lot of, you know, kind of appetizers and antipastos and things like that. And that's really what inspired the idea of, you know, first courses and making a lot of first courses. And so that was really what was in my mind. Writing her, Janie's much more confident of a cook than I was at that age. But once I started using Ina Garten's cookbooks, I got a lot more confident, because I think she taught a lot of us how we could approach cooking in a much more confident way.
So which recipes in the book are your favorites?
So really, so there's a lot of things that I would love, kind of over time to add to my website. But when I was thinking about something to start kind of distributing to people who are reading the book, it was the biscuits that Janie makes on this very complicated morning.
The recipe
starts,
here.
Yes. It starts off very nice morning, and Rocky's at the house, and she makes these biscuits, and then Lance shows up, and a lot of things go sideways. But I put the biscuit recipe on my website, jennbouchard.com. If you go to, there's a new recipes tab, and you can get the biscuit recipe. And biscuit recipes tend to be pretty similar to each other, but what I have figured out in making them is there's a few tricks that I think make these just really fantastic. So I hope everyone enjoys those biscuits Janie makes.
I was thinking about making them, but it's so hot.
I know, it's a little hot for biscuits at the moment.
You don't have central air, that makes a big difference.
No. And I know you also put a recipe on your website as well, and I just bought a ton of cherries today, so I can't wait.
Yeah, so and I think they're going to put both the links in the chat. Belmont Books will do that for us. But yeah, so I was thinking about with these biscuits, it actually might be really good on the biscuits. So I have a recipe for cherry sops, and if you've ever heard, and I'm going to curse, so if you don't like cursing, plug yours. If you've ever heard of the dish, it's an army dish, shit on a shingle. That is a sop, and basically it's a dish for the sick. And in the Renaissance, these basically these dishes on toast were really popular. So it might be savory, it might be sweet. There would be like mushrooms on toast, or chip beef, or like just stuff on toast. But they also had ones with like cherries and peaches and apples on, like in a savory or a sweet sort of syrupy thing on toast. And so there's a recipe in this 1570 cookbook for the guy that I wrote about, Bartolomeo Scoppi. He had a cookbook that was the most popular cookbook for almost 200 years after it was published. And this recipe is in that book for cherry sops. And honestly, if you just went without toast and you toasted up some biscuits, it would be amazing on that. So, if you have extra cherries, you could easily do that.
I can't wait. It sounds delicious.
So you have, was there any food scene in there though that you just loved besides the biscuits? Like, you have so many in there that you can just talk about one.
Well, and so I won't say what happens in the pizza scene. This isn't food that she makes, but we lived in the Chicago suburbs for 12 years, and deep dish pizza is very important to Chicago, and people argue about which ones are better and things like that. But writing, I knew the pizza scene was going to happen, and I had to get everything to that point. And when I got to start writing what leads up to the pizza scene, I still remember I was writing in the Marriott lobby bar. Like I used to write at the lobby bar in a hotel all the time. And I was so excited to write the scene. I knew it was going to be hard, and I was going to have to think about where everyone was sitting, and then how was this pizza going to enter. And it was very technical. I felt almost like I was blocking a play. But then, making sure this pizza arrives, and then the pizza plays into some things a little bit later on. I really enjoyed writing that scene a lot. It was tough, but I was excited to write it.
So, okay, it looks like that there's a couple links in the chat for my site and for your site. So, and so go ahead and click through, and you can find, I think you have more than one recipe on your site too, don't you?
In my blog, I do actually. If you go to my blog, they're mostly other people's recipes, but just a lot of times I talk about things that I've been making. So give people some inspiration when you just can't figure out what to cook.
And I see that people in the chat are saying you're an amazing cook. So yeah, so it sounds like she's got some good inspiration on her site. You definitely should go check it out. So have you always been a writer?
Not, I always liked writing. Like I enjoyed taking, creative writing class when I was younger, in middle school and high school and things like that, but never anything that I felt was particularly good or worth publication. I never really tried to take it anywhere. And so it's been, this was truly, on a whim, like, can I do this? And I found that I really do love writing fiction. And, as Christy was saying when she introduced me, I've had 4 short stories published in the last couple of years. I've got a 5th in submission right now. And I am going to start writing something else soon. So.
Oh, good, because that was going to be another question.
I can talk a little bit more about it. I don't want to give away too much right now, but I am going to start working on a new novel. It's going to be set near my favorite beach on Cape Cod, in Dennis Mayflower Beach. It's going to be about a little bit of an older protagonist, and she is a business owner. She owns a restaurant, bar, cafe kind of place, and she doesn't take any garbage from anybody, and she's pretty awesome. I'm really excited to really write her character. And one day a group of people come in to her business and everything changes from that point on. And I'm not going to say any more about that right now.
So you're writing a book about set at a beach. So it's definitely a beach book.
Yeah. And I think, writing about food, just like you, I mean, this is my thing. All of the short stories I've written have included either cooking or just the enjoyment of really good food.
Yeah, food is at the heart of everything we do in some way. So, I'm all for it. So tell us about your writing process. I saw somebody said that you write in hotel lobby bars.
Yeah. Well, that, and I missed it. So I'm excited to be able to do that again. I love writing in places where I can eavesdrop on conversations. And the great thing about where I was is that there were always people around. There were events being planned, weddings. People would come and sit at the lobby bar and sit down with the wedding coordinator. So I'd overhear those conversations. There would be conventions and dance competitions and things like that going on. So just kind of being part of the human experience and hearing and seeing how people interacted with each other really helped me a lot in writing this book for sure. So writing from home, my last 2 short stories was a little bit trickier.
Yeah, I don't have the luxury of being able to use any overheard conversations in my books because they've all been historical. So, but there is something fun about being able to do that. Very definitely. So do you have like a writing process? Do you write at certain times? Do you use an outline, or do you just pants it? Like when we say pantsing in the writing world, it's basically fly by the seat of your pants for those of you who've never heard that term. How do you write?
I definitely outline. I am a plotter, as we call the opposite of a pantser. And so I do outline. I write up some character sketches, some basic things about the characters. I also I do something that I call dialogue slices. I made this up, but I'll think about dialogue that characters might have with each other, and I will write it down. And then if I just sketch it on a legal pad or something like that, and then write it and type it up later, and I'll have all of these little chunks of dialogue that might or might not make it into the book, but it really helps me to think about how the characters interact with each other, how they relate to each other, what kind of conversation might they have with each other. And so that helps me a lot when I actually get down to the nitty gritty of writing the book.
Oh, I love that idea. That sounds like, yeah, I write so straightforwardly. So it's interesting, that idea of like taking snippets and then and working around them. That sounds really cool. Anyway, I'm totally might steal that from you. So what was the biggest challenge you had writing this book?
I would say time, of course. It took me 2.5 years to write the first draft, and this isn't even a very long book. with teaching full time, and my kids were so much younger when I first started. And I also had no idea what I was doing. So I was writing, and I was also trying to go to author events and read author interviews and just, get a sense of, what I should be doing and what inspires them. And that was very helpful. And then once I drafted it, I started just editing on my own. And then I started really learning about the publishing industry and what I needed to do next. So, the education of the whole thing, making connections in the industry. It's been a lot of fun. It just, takes time, as you know, and it's a huge learning curve.
Yeah, being in Boston is a definite advantage for us.
Absolutely.
There's so many authors in the area and so many great bookstores, and Belmont Books is like down the street for me, and it's one of my favorites. So, so I would love to open this up for questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat, but please feel free to go ahead, and if you've got additional questions, put them in the Q&A section down there. At the very bottom, you can see Q&A, and we can kind of go through those. You ready? Okay, one of them we've already asked, but I'm going to ask it again because I love this topic. What was the inspiration for the recipes in your book?
So, like I said earlier, thinking about what I liked to make, because the title First Course, there's a lot of plays on that throughout the book, and so if you haven't read it yet, it'll make more sense as you go. It kind of runs through the book, but I also wanted to have it mean other things, but also literally be about the first courses that people like to eat. And so I thought a lot about hors d'oeuvres and appetizers and things along those lines. But the title came to me one day while I was doing laundry, like most things do.
Sheila was the one that asked that question. Kathy Dowd asks, have you made all the hors d'oeuvres and cocktails you describe on the book? The detail on those is wonderful.
I think so. I think about the crostini that she makes early on in the book, in the first chapter, when she comes home from the really bad day at work. I've definitely done that, where you throw a bunch of stuff that you find in the refrigerator together, and the same thing with drinks. You're like, okay, what do we have? We have mint. Let's make some version of a mojito. And that actually sounds really good on a hot day like this. But yeah, so I definitely, pretty much everything. I would never in a million years make some of the things that Meredith Ashton made, though.
Yeah, I would hope not.
No.
Okay, let's see here. Stephanie Galvani wants to know how the pandemic has shaped or changed your writing.
So the last two short stories I wrote were pandemic related, and I know that is not something that everyone wants to read, and I think others do. And so the Little Patuxent Review just published Tape on the Floor, which is my short story about the very early days when people were super confused about, like, what am I supposed to do? If I go to a grocery store, how do I act? And things along those lines. And then the one that's in submissions now is, about slightly later in the pandemic, as people are trying to navigate important family, interactions and events and things along those lines. So I definitely kind of had it on the brain. It was hard for me to escape it as I was, attempting to write again. I feel now like I'm ready to write about other things again. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It was interesting. There was such a surge of pandemic literature at the very beginning. Everybody was reading all the books about pandemics, and then of course the apocalyptic zombie books all came out, and we all quickly lost our appetite for that, I think, within a month or two. But so Elizabeth Diffin wants to know, who was your favorite minor character and why?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Professor Chris Manfred. And I think for me, I've always felt as if people come into our lives at times when we need them. And he was that person, for, just the way that Janie meets him is so by chance. And then he ends up being so important to her. And really, she doesn't have parents anymore. And he knew her parents. And that, I think, is really important, as she's fine. She can do, she's very self-sufficient, but just to have his presence and his wife's presence, I think, ends up being very meaningful to her.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed writing him.
Heather Firmer has 2 questions. What's your favorite part about being published? And then what's your favorite part about becoming a published author? So it's actually 1 question. She also says,
I loved, and Heather, is Heather Firmer, you said?
Heather Firmer, yeah.
Yeah, she's an author too. And I have loved meeting all of these authors. It has been so much fun. I love how supportive the community I have found has been. I love how collaborative it is. And I was explaining it to someone earlier today, because this group of friends of mine came over, and I said, it has been such a surprise to me how collaborative it is. And it makes a lot of sense if you really think about it, because if people are going to read, they're going to read lots of books. So they're going to read my book, they're going to read your book. And, if we can work together on things, even better. So I have really enjoyed meeting all of these authors and learning from them. There's so much to learn.
Yeah, I think that the industry has shifted. It didn't used to be so collaborative. And now that published authors have to do a lot more of our own marketing, we've realized it helps to connect up with people that are writing books that are similar to yours or in the same genres. And I think you're also part of a debut group too, which I was my debut year, and I found it absolutely invaluable. And I met friends that I still consider to be close today. So I'm assuming that you've probably found that to be really helpful.
And it has been such an awesome group to be able to just bounce ideas off of and to get support from. It's been incredible.
Emma Sprague wants to know, what was the moment you knew this was the story you were going to write?
Like I said, I started writing it, coming up with the ideas and sketching it out almost 7 years ago. And I think once I seriously started writing it, then I realized that I couldn't not write it. I knew that I had to keep going, and that any other thing I'd ever tried at a much younger age to write, and I just threw it out like this. I don't like this anymore. I never really, the murky middle is hard, as any author will say with a book, but I never wanted to throw it in the trash can. And so that's how I knew that I had to keep going. And this was the first book for me.
The second one is easier, I swear.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
You kind of know what you're doing. It makes such a big difference because you know what editors are going to chop out. You have a sense of how to plot in a way you didn't before. They become a little more enjoyable, I think, in that regard. So
I've learned so much. I think about that first chapter, and I rewrote it about 20 times. Yeah. So I know that feeling. I might do it again, but I feel like at least I know some things to avoid this time.
Yeah, definitely. Carolyn Savage wants to know if you come from a family of writers.
Yeah, I would say, all of my close family is expresses themselves in writing very well. And what's been, really fantastic is my 10-year-old daughter has been, watching me do this the whole time, and has really taken an interest and writes little stories all the time, both at school and at home, just for fun. And so I think it's been great to watch her do this. But definitely, my father's a great writer, and he writes a lot of pieces for different military and current events related publications and things like that. And there's I would say, going way back into my family, I'd say everyone is pretty talented, I would say, in some, in different ways in expressing themselves with writing. And so I feel very lucky to have those influences.
Yeah, I was the only one in my family, so I didn't have anyone really. People were excited, but I didn't have like talent to draw upon. So yeah, I imagine that makes a difference. Um, okay. Are there any characters based or inspired by a specific family or a friend?
No, no, I think that, we think about different attributes and, different aspects of personalities of, people we've come across at different points in our life. And but I would say, each character is probably a mix of, 50 different people, some of who I never even actually spoke to. I may have just heard them at the lobby bar at the Marriott, and so I wouldn't say that anyone is, particularly influenced by any one person. I have a really good time creating a character, even, thinking about their past, their quirks, how they interact with people. I really enjoy that aspect of it, like giving them, a true identity.
Yeah, the world building part. That's always fun, definitely. Elizabeth Diffin wants to know if you would write a sequel, or is this it for the characters?
I think this is it. I thought about this a bunch earlier today. I don't really know exactly what, I could make predictions. A bunch of us, all watch the Friends reunion, and you think about where people would be, later on. And, I don't exactly know how some things end up for them. And I like leaving it a little bit open-ended. And I'm ready to move on to new characters and a new story.
Yeah, after you sit with a book for a couple of years, sometimes you're just done. But you never know; those characters may
know
sneak back into your head at some point. Shannon Riley wants to know, I've had the same story in my head for years too. I just don't know how to get past the beginning. Did you just really stick to it, like practicing an instrument, or does a light go off? Personal thoughts and thoughts based on those you've learned from.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will say that Shannon needs to stick with it, because she is a great writer and she will write an amazing book someday. I would say that you do have to stick with it. You have to be persistent. It's going to be really messy. And like I said, I rewrote that first chapter 20 times, and that's okay. And I know that now, and I know not to be hard on myself about a messy first draft, and that everything can be fixed.
Yeah.
So just keep going. You got this, Shannon.
Was there something that you did when you were creatively stuck? Like, did you ever have to take time away from the story?
Absolutely. I really found reading other books really to be helpful. Going to hear an author if I could, or reading an interview with another author, I found really inspirational. Just, even just spending time outside if possible, if it worked out weather-wise in Boston at that time of year. Changes of scenery, very helpful as well. And I would just find myself it would kind of come back into my head. And then, a lot of times things would clear and I would start to see a way forward for the writing. That's a great question.
Yeah. That's all the questions we have. Does anybody have other questions before we wrap up? I have one. Well, we wait for anyone to finish typing. Who are your favorite food writers?
Oh my gosh. So I love reading, actual cookbooks, and I have tons of them. I love learning. I love reading about, how different cooks approach things. But Louise Miller is fantastic.
Yeah.
I got to hear her at the Muse in the Marketplace. For those of you who don't know, Grub Street, there is an annual writing conference, and I really enjoyed hearing from her. She wrote 2 books, City Baker's Guide to Country Living and The Late Bloomers Club, and they take place in small town Vermont, which is so charming.
She's a baker, so she
knows her stuff, and her descriptions and how she weaves it into the story, she's so good. I really enjoyed her books.
Yeah, they're she made some pies. She recreated one of the Renaissance pies for my launch of Chef's Secret, which was amazing, and it is good. Yeah, her pie, actually, if anyone goes to my site and the Renaissance section, there's a free digital cookbook you can download, and Louise's recipe for that pie is in that cookbook. So
That's fantastic.
yeah, it was good.
I bet it was.
I think is that all the questions?
There's a couple in the chat. I don't know.
Oh, Jocelyn wanted to know, other than Ina Garten, whose food inspires you?
Melissa Clark, who writes for New York Times Cooking, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I have loved every single thing that she has made, and even things that have been pretty ambitious that I've been nervous about doing, like when I made chocolate babka for the first time last year for Father's Day, and it was a process. It was unbelievable. So I trust her. Like, I know it's going to be worth it.
Shannon Riley says, just would like to comment that this has been so fueling. I look forward to reading both your books. Thank you for taking the time to talk about your experiences as authors with us. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, so it looks like those are all the questions. I don't know if Christy from Belmont Books has anything to add.
There she is.
Hi guys. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Jen and Crystal. This conversation has been so thoughtful, so wonderful. I think I completely agree with Shannon in her very kind comment. And Jen, we're so honored to be getting the opportunity to help.
Thank you so much for doing this. This is great.
Yes, thank you so much to Jen and Crystal. Thank you everyone for being here. If you're like me, you're very hungry right now. So it's that time. And yeah, don't forget to visit Jen and Crystal's websites for apparently some good cooking. I'm gonna have to do that myself. And of course, both books, or Jen's book and both of Crystal's books are available at Belmont Books.
Thank you so much,
Crystal. Thank you. Thanks, Christy.
Happy launch day.
Congrats,
Thanks,
Jen.
everybody.
All right, bye all.
Thanks, everybody.